Hi everyone, I'm Abby from Abby's Kitchen. Welcome back to our series, Enlightened by Intuitive Eating. In our last video, we discussed Principle 4 of Intuitive Eating, Challenge the Food Police. So if you haven't watched that video, go back and check it out by clicking the link right here, and then come back to watch this one. Also, a big thank you to Alissa Rumsey, Intuitive Eating Dietitian, for reviewing this content. I'm going to be leaving her contact information in the description so you can easily reach out to her for some one-on-one support. Now, before we get started, I wanted to flag that this content may not be for all of my viewers, so feel free to take and leave whatever you find valuable. Also, don't forget to follow the intuitive eating journey along with me through Evelyn Tripoli and Elise Resch's book, which I'm going to be linking in the description below. Okay, let's get into a reader question. Dear Abby, I have celiac disease, which means that I have to avoid all gluten-containing products. If I have even the teeniest bit of gluten, it can cause a lot of damage to my GI tract. I'm having a hard time balancing this with intuitive eating and also the judgment of others who think that this is a fad. Any advice? This is such a popular and important question. Now, let's be real. The diet industry has done a great job at co-opting medically necessary dietary restrictions into trendy ways to eat. But for a lot of people with food intolerances and allergies, this is just not another fad. In the case of celiac disease specifically, gluten actually damages the GI tract and destroys microvilli, which can lead to poor nutrient absorption. Therefore, avoiding gluten is necessary for good health. But whether we're talking about celiac disease, a food allergy, or a food sensitivity or intolerance, only you know what foods immediately make you feel good or bad. And part of eating intuitively is listening very carefully to your body, then gathering data about how foods make you feel, and making choices based on that data. Just like I mentioned in my previous intuitive eating video where I talked about veganism and intuitive eating, for some people who have really dangerous symptoms and experiences from eating a particular food, you may in fact feel that this food is just simply inedible. So gluten-containing bread might just be not seen as food or edible to a person with celiac disease. In other cases where perhaps the reaction is less severe, you may occasionally decide that a piece of cake is worth the physical symptoms, even though the data you've collected says, hey, I get diarrhea when I eat ice cream. Eating ice cream wouldn't be failing at intuitive eating. The key is to move on without any guilt, shame, or insisting on restricting or punishing yourself as a result. If you're finding that your dietary restrictions are getting in the way of you finding food freedom, start by reframing how you think about the offending food and ensuring that there's always tasty alternatives that you can enjoy. So instead of saying, I can't have bread, try saying, I choose to eat foods that make me feel good, which excludes gluten-filled bread, but I can have this amazing gluten-free croissant. Try to direct your attention towards all the amazing food options that you do have, rather than the few items that are inedible to you. By doing this, you're choosing foods that you enjoy and that feel good to your body, two really important elements of intuitive eating. Finally, if you're dealing with comments from others about your dietary restrictions, it's important to really address them. Sometimes it's as simple as explaining to the person that you have a food allergy or a food intolerance, and that although you have to avoid certain foods, you openly eat many other ones. For other people, you may have to be a bit more upfront and advocate for your health. Remember, only you are the expert in your body. Okay, so on that note, let's move on to the video. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing principle number 5, feel your fullness. Now, growing up, I'm sure a lot of you had parents that told you to clean your plate before you could leave the table. As a fellow parent now, I'm sure the intentions were in the right place, and they simply just wanted to prevent food waste or ensure that you were well nourished so that you didn't wake up at 3 a.m. really super hungry. But here's the thing. Forcing any kid to finish their plate can teach a child to override their innate hunger cues. And over time, children learn that the way to know that they're done eating is simply when their plate is empty, not when their body tells them. As they reach adulthood, they bring this mentality with them. Only now they've got free access to a wide range of highly palatable processed foods everywhere they go, and disposable income to purchase them. Now, think about a family-sized bag of chips and how easy it is to polish that bag off when binge watching your favorite show. First, eating distracted can muffle your fullness cues. Second, you subconsciously finish the bag because you're done when the bag is done. Now, another example is when you're satisfied from eating your post-dinner cookie treat, but you notice that there's 1 or 2 cookies left in the package, so you eat them to finish off the pack. The clean your plate mentality can be a huge reason why you may be overeating without even knowing it. But I can hear you thinking, but Abby, if I don't eat all the food on my plate, aren't I restricting food? The answer is simple, no. As an intuitive eater, you allow all foods in your diet with no explicit rules or limitations. You want the cookie? You have permission to have the cookie. You want a salad? You have permission to have a salad. So if you have a plate of food and you're full before it's all finished, you know that you always can enjoy that food another time. You can put the rest in the fridge for leftovers and have it another time. It's not gone forever, and tomorrow will be another delicious day. But if you restrict foods to only special occasions like cheat days, let's say your favorite 5-layer lasagna, you are going to want to lick that plate clean because you know that you only get it every blue moon. You have now placed this food under a special category, and because of that, you're less likely to listen to your hunger cues and go overboard. But if you knew that this food is available later, let's say you put some away as leftovers, it's easy to stop eating when you've reached fullness because you know you can enjoy it again later. Having said that, sometimes I get that a really, really special dish can only be enjoyed in social occasions because, I don't know, maybe someone special makes it for you, or you're at a really special restaurant for your birthday. Sometimes you're just going to overeat. The key here is to not punish yourself by restricting calories or exercising more to undo the damage. Hey, you ate a lot of lasagna, it's not a big deal. If you're listening intently to your body, maybe you won't be as hungry for a big breakfast the next day. Or maybe you will. Notice these things, but don't judge yourself and simply move on. Now, unfortunately, because of this clean plate mentality, a lot of people struggle to know what comfortable satiety feels like. This is the point at which you've satisfied your hunger, but you're not so full that you're uncomfortable. You don't want any more food, but if you had another bite, you'd be bursting at the seams. The point at which a person achieves this is obviously different from person to person. Some people feel it really quickly and easily, while others take a little while and simply need more time. It's really based on a person's hunger, their needs, and what their body wants at that time. So don't compare your plate to another person's. To undo the clean plate mentality, you're going to have to work on this for a little bit of time. You need to find a way to get away from the idea that you're done eating when there's no more food available. To do this, I want you to try being on high alert when eating. Take notice of every bite, every flavor, every texture. By becoming hyper-aware of the act of eating, you're putting your attention on the experience of eating instead of the external indicators of what your plate looks like. Over time, this process may help you to slow down, and you'll start paying attention to the gradual shift from being hungry to being satisfied. According to Evelyn Tribole and Alissa Rumsey, the writers of Intuitive Eating, this is called conscious eating. If we go back to our last video on principle number 4, Challenge the Food Police, you remember that I mentioned the food anthropologist. This is a neutral voice that observes and makes notes. No judgment takes place. So during conscious eating, I really want you to welcome in the food anthropologist. Now let's go through the phases of eating with the food anthropologist by our side, starting with the time during the meal or snack. While you're eating, I want you to take a second every few bites, maybe put your knife and fork down, finish chewing, and just pause. This isn't a welcome invitation to stop eating, it's just a pause. Now I want you to check in with yourself and notice the following. Taste. How does the food taste? Do you like it? Are you only eating it because it's available and in front of you? Really check in with how pleasurable eating that food is for you. Satiety. Check in with how hungry you really are. Are you satisfying your hunger by eating this food? Is your hunger going away? At the beginning of meal, this may not be very obvious. Throughout the meal, you may want to do a few of these satiety check-ins. Keep in mind that you may not notice your satiety levels change at all. I mean, from years of dieting, it can take many, many, many meals and a lot of practice before you start to clue in. Just like you may not get to know a person very well after one dinner date, you may not know your satiety cues after one meal or day either. Now let's talk about what happens when you're done eating. Now, regardless of how much food you ate, I want you to take a non-judgmental observation. Ask yourself, am I still hungry? Am I satisfied? Am I really full? On a scale, I want you to rate your fullness. 0 to 3 would be like ravenously hungry, 4 to 5 is pretty hungry, 6 to 7 is satisfied, 8 is full, 9 is stuffed, 10 is sick. Now, most people feel comfortable around a 6 or a 7, when you're satisfied and not really hungry, but you're not so full that you're feeling unwell. So again, if you go over a 7, you're not failing. So do not let this turn into the hunger fullness diet. Every meal and every person is so different that your needs are always going to ebb and flow depending on where you land at each meal. Sometimes you're going to eat to just a 4 and you're going to need to eat sooner after. And sometimes you're going to eat to a full-on 10 and maybe you'll be satisfied for the rest of the day. This is just data to help you correlate how you feel and what you find comfortable as patterns in how you eat, not to serve as another impossible measuring stick to beat yourself down with. Just like we did during principle number 2, I want you to check in with your hunger before you eat and then check in with your fullness when you're done. Interestingly, oftentimes, the hungrier you are when you start eating, the more likely you are to feel overly full, stuffed, or even sick when you're done. This is why principle 2, honor your hunger, comes first. Because it's going to be really hard to stop eating when you're full if you aren't honoring each and every one of those body's hunger cues. Honoring your hunger by eating whenever you are hungry helps to build back body trust and makes it easier for you to stop when you're full because your body trusts that whenever you're hungry again, you're going to eat. Again, that is just data to help you make decisions in the future about when it feels best to start eating and later stop. Now, I want to make something very clear. You do not have to leave food on your plate. If you're still hungry, by all means, of course, eat until you're satisfied. Clear your plate, add more to your plate. The idea here is that you're listening to your body, not the appearance of the food on your plate. Now, although you now know how to identify fullness, you may still be wondering, what if I don't notice these signs? And truth be told, that is totally normal. A lot of people have lost the art of this from years and years of dieting. But the key here is to learn how to increase your eating consciousness with the following very important steps. Number 1, limit distractions. I'm a mom. Multitasking is legitimately my middle name. But parent or otherwise, we live in a society where we are praised for being able to do a lot in a little amount of time. We eat breakfast while watching the news, we work at our desk while eating lunch, and despite the notion that we can multitask, we actually aren't as good at it as we might think. In fact, when you multitask, research suggests that you're dividing your brain's resources and attention, resulting in less efficient work. Sure, you can do it, but not to the same degree as if you were to do each of those tasks one by one. So if you're trying to become an intuitive eater, you really need to invest the time and effort into doing it. Start by limiting distractions around you. So turn the TV off, put your work away, really focus on the act of eating in a distraction-free environment. If you have different things taking up your attention is no longer focused on listening to your body's hunger and fullness cues. This is not about setting rigid rules where you can never watch TV and eat food at the same time, but it's a good idea to test this out to see if you find more pleasure in eating when you're not so distracted. You might be surprised how much more flavorful and enjoyable food is when you've got your full attention on it. Number 2, reinforce your conscious decision to stop. It's easy to tell ourselves, okay, you're done eating. It's another to actually stop eating. One useful trick is to give yourself a visual cue that you're done eating. Remember, you're done eating when you're satisfied, not when you feel like you should be done. So for example, when you're done with your meal, you can put your napkin on top of your plate. That simple barrier between you and the food can actually work wonders. It reminds you that you consciously decided that you're done. And if you're still looking to eat, perhaps take a second to just recheck your hunger to make sure that you're not actually still hungry. If you don't like the idea of that, you can try putting your food into leftover containers when you're done eating. That way, you know you already have it prepped for another meal, and it's visually telling you that your meal is complete. Number 3, defend yourself from obligatory eating. Remember that you are in charge of the type of food and how much food you eat. If you're not hungry, you don't have to eat. This is always the case when visiting a relative's house. There is always one food pusher who wants you to eat and eat and eat. I mean, we talked all about this in my holiday food and body shaming video here, so you can check that out. But like I mentioned in the video, although their intentions are usually good, you have the right to say no. It's a good thing to just remember that you do not need to eat just for the sake of being polite. Finally, let's address a really common problem that a lot of people on the intuitive eating journey have, which is feeling hungry all the time. It may be frustrating that you're already hungry after like 2 hours of eating. You listen to your hunger and fullness cues, and yet again, here you are, hungry. It's important to keep in mind that there are a lot of factors that can affect our fullness. They're both biological and learned. By having a better understanding of the things that cause us to be hungry or full, you may also have a better time trusting your body and actually feeling your fullness. Here are some factors that may affect your fullness levels. Number 1, time. How much time has passed since the last time you ate? It sounds obvious, but the more frequently you eat, the less hungry you end up being. Going too long between your meals can cause your blood sugar levels to plummet, your hunger hormones skyrocketing, and you end up overeating. If you know that your lunch and dinner are going to be very far apart, this is when you'd want to incorporate some snacks in between. This allows you to fuel your body and brain and prevents you from experiencing that intense hunger. And again, I know this will be a question, but Abby, snacking isn't healthy. And this leads me to my second point. Types of food. Despite popular belief, snacks are not inherently unhealthy. But of course, we can always make a more satiating, nutritious choice. So a snack that is high in healthy fats, protein, and fiber will help keep you full much longer than ones that are just high in simple sugars. Simple sugars give you a quick energy boost, which is great in certain situations like a high-intensity workout, but without any fiber, protein, or good fats, it can often be followed by a rapid crash in blood sugar levels. This can lead you to feel hungry really soon after. So if you're noticing that you're hungry after a snack or meal, check in to see what that meal or snack consisted of. Ideally, you want a meal to have a good source of protein, fiber from some whole grains or veggies, and some healthy fats. I call this the hunger-crushing combination. And together, these compounds take longer to digest, keeping you feeling full much longer. Number 3, social influences. Interestingly, we eat differently depending on who is around us. In fact, research suggests that we tend to eat more food and for much longer when we eat in large groups. And this makes sense. If we're by ourselves, we usually just eat our food and move on. But remember, food is a social activity. So of course, we spend time eating and chatting and doing all those fun things when we're with our friends. However, research suggests that some dieters are more likely to be influenced by the food choices of others around them and may purposefully undereat out of fear of being judged, especially in the presence of model eaters. In either situation, we tend to ignore our biological cues for hunger and fullness when in front of other people. My suggestion is to remind yourself that no one knows your body's needs like you do. If your friend is having a salad or barely touches their meal, it maybe is because they had a big pancake breakfast. Or if another friend is having a burger and fries or polishes off their plate and pressures you to do the same, you never know, they maybe skipped breakfast and are really hungry for a hearty meal. Everyone's needs are different, so choose a meal that satisfies your appetite and make a point to check in with yourself throughout the meal. Use the social activity as an opportunity to really slow down between bites, to engage in conversation, and to check in with your hunger and fullness throughout the meal. Next, let's talk about air food. Now, a lot of diet foods are full of air. I mean, no, literally, like a rice cake is full of air. Hence why I say it's a vessel for peanut butter in my house, but hey, that's just me. Now, the reason why these foods are not necessarily the best snacks on their own is because they only temporarily decrease hunger. The food enters your stomach and kind of tricks you into thinking you're full because it adds volume, but because it's lacking any real sustenance, you'll be really hungry pretty quickly. This also can backfire because these foods tend to have a health halo effect. You know that they're low in calories, so you can eat a large portion of them to fill your stomach up. But at the end of the day, you could have become full off of a nutrient-dense meal and stayed fuller a lot longer. So a lot of people, for example, turn to salads as a healthy option, but these too can be air food as well. So lettuce in a bowl by itself is by no means a salad. So here are some ways to up the staying power of your salad. First is to add protein. So things like shredded chicken, tuna, chickpeas, kidney beans, lentils, and tofu are all great options. Also add some carbs, quinoa, couscous, or have some whole grain crackers or bread on the side. Don't forget about fat as well, so olive oil, avocado, cheese, nuts, seeds, etc. Now, whether we're talking a salad or another meal or snack, the goal here is to incorporate slow digesting macronutrients. So fat, protein, and fiber-rich carbs. Again, we will talk way more about this in the episode on gentle nutrition. But bottom line, becoming aware of fullness factors can really help your inner food anthropologist determine the reasons for your quickly returning hunger. Once you've determined the cause, you can slowly incorporate some intuitive eating principles to work towards feeling your fullness for much longer. If you feel like you can't stop eating even if you're full, then this may be a sign that you're using food as a coping mechanism. I will be diving into this a lot more when we discuss principle number 7, so definitely stay tuned for that. Now, your homework for this week. So this week, I really want you to focus on eating consciously. Like I mentioned earlier, I want you to take a pause a few times while you're eating. Really focus on the flavors of the food, your hunger and fullness levels, and take charge in deciding when you're done eating. Find yourself a visual cue that you can use to help signal to yourself that you're done, and be sure to rate your fullness using that satiety scale. Again, a reminder that there is no right or wrong with the hunger fullness scale. Just take notice of where you land before a meal, during a meal, and after a meal. Jot down how it makes you feel, what foods you ate, and how well they helped your hunger. Continue to work on these steps throughout your intuitive eating journey. And of course, stay tuned for our next video on principle number 6, Discover the Satisfaction Factor. So folks, that is all for today. If you liked it, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below if you have any questions about intuitive eating. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!